So just for some context, kind of like about your background and where we met, because we met doing, I was doing photo and you were doing video for a wedding company in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, yeah, we're doing the same wedding. You were over there with like the tripod and the video crew, and we just kind of like, I guess just we only worked with each other that one gig, right?
Yeah, only one gig.
Yeah. And then we kept in touch, worked on a bunch of commercial projects, and since then that was all in Vancouver. Since then you moved to Quebec, and
Yep.
you've been doing some video production, and most recently starting your rental company and production company, Django.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. And so, how is the industry for video production in Quebec? Like, uh, what drew you to Quebec as a place to start your agency there?
What drew me to Quebec is mostly first I have family there. I was born in Quebec and grew in Quebec until I moved to Vancouver when I was like 28.
Mm-hmm.
So the first part of my life has been in Quebec, and why I moved back is just for the cost of living because Vancouver was unbearable.
Yeah.
It became so expensive. It was ridiculous, and I did a burnout and just came back to Quebec because it's cheaper and the salaries like the money making like the cost, not the cost, but like how much you can charge to a client is the same.
Right.
So it's easier to have a decent living in Quebec. And the industry it's kind of hard to say because in Quebec is kind of big. So you have Montreal, which is big and booming,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in Sherbrooke, which is about an hour and a half from Montreal, and we're kind of like pushing for the industry to develop. My friends and I, so it's cool because there isn't a lot of competition in what we're doing,
Yeah.
but it's also like we have to educate clients about quality productions, about like what it really costs and all that jazz. But it's fun. Like the industry is good enough to like make a good living and work full time and have fun and have nice contracts. And sometimes we go to Montreal, so
Okay.
that's cool.
So, what industry are you targeting, and what products, services are you offering them?
Um, the industry we're targeting is mostly high end commercial. We're pushing towards high end commercial and high end corporate gigs.
Okay.
That's what we're pushing for, and also music videos. So we have commercial and I always forget that name. Commercial and
Corporate.
corporate, yeah, high end commercial, corporate, and high end music videos. So that's what we're building right now, and yeah,
Okay.
that's
So, are you working with like a lot of like local business owners, and also some like bigger companies, like Quebec-based companies or Canada-wide companies?
mostly Quebec based.
Okay.
Currently, it's mostly like Even I would even say it's Sherbrooke based because
Hmm.
there's a lot of company with a lot of money here,
Yeah.
and that's where we work the most. And we currently had like small. I mean, small. It's like sub 30K contract. It's like 10, 15K.
Hmm.
That's what we've been doing quite a bit right now, and we're kind of trying to push towards like higher paying clients. And we also are in the work to work with marketing agencies because the bigger client always comes from marketing agencies. That's who have the most money,
Yeah.
and then we want to like work with those marketing agency to like promote our services and work with their clients.
Okay. And like, what kind of video products are you selling the most? Like, what are people asking you to do, and what are you pitching? Is it like short form commercial, short form social, or are you doing long form content? What kind of stuff, or just corporate education stuff? Like, what are the main top promoted, top selling products that you're doing?
It's mostly I would say in a commercial realm, it's long form. Long form for commercial. They're always like the average around like a minute,
Mm-hmm.
um, between 1 minute and 3 minutes. It's like interviews and like almost like short films. Like
Yeah.
we're working on like I can't say a lot of on what we're working on because we sign NDAs, but it's like we build a story around what we're selling. So it's like you follow someone like living through that, and it's like we take that bigger form and then we make it shorter afterwards. So we make like many reels and just like cut it into smaller bite size um, videos.
Okay. So a lot of like storytelling based commercial
Hmm.
work.
Yeah,
That's
because the
awesome.
goal, yeah, it's fun because our goal, we're all from like different background and we all want to go like towards cinema, toward making films,
Yeah.
actual like films. So we want everything we make to have this narrative kind of like line, so we can push our storytelling further and like our way of making video further. That way we go towards like making bigger films.
Right. So why don't we talk a little bit about storytelling? Because this is something that I've been diving into a little bit more recently, especially with our social media marketing agency and like the way that we see story is through social media. We're telling a long form story of that of a personal brand or a business, but through social media is generally through short form content, right? So we're slowly piecing together that story and building content pieces to tell the story. But I think it's something that is often either overlooked, disregarded, or not even considered in a lot of things. But what do you think is the power of story in the type of work that you're doing and for businesses? Like, what impact does it have?
I think it's one of the thing that is often, like you say, disregarded and not thought about enough. But I think it's one of the most powerful thing because when you build a story around your brand, about around your product, people tend to just like want to engage more,
Mm-hmm.
and also feel like it leaves a bigger impact than just like cool shots for cool shots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like story has the capacity to like have more impact because you're going to connect to the story more than just cool
Right.
shots. But it also takes a lot more time and a lot more effort, and that's why it's often disregarded because it's hard to tell a good story. You have to like develop your storytelling, but to me
Definitely.
it's the most powerful tool.
And I'm curious how your approach to storytelling is versus the approach that we've been taking for social media marketing. For social media marketing, for example, we've taken the approach of telling the story of the end consumer because it is a marketing. We're using social media for marketing, so telling the story of the end consumer, getting them to see themselves in the stories that we tell, in the products or the services that we share and we talk about, so they can see that connection, and infusing the story of the business and the transformation either of the business owner, if it's a personal brand, or the business itself, to build that emotional connection with the audience, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I think as long as you're telling the story, I think it's always good.
Mm-hmm.
The way I personally do it is more like we're telling a story around like the business or like the company or the product,
Yeah.
and we often like just integrate it into the story. So it's kind of like more, we take more of a backdoor approach.
Okay.
So instead of being of like telling the story of the end user, we often just like craft a story around that so people can kind of relate to it,
Yeah.
and we integrate like the values of the company or like what you would be doing with that. So I think it's basically the same thing, but just in a different way because we approach it with like longer form
Right.
than short bites.
Yeah.
And we also do like interviews. So basically we talk with people about like their value, their company and stuff like that. And that when we do that, it's more like straightforward. Like tell us about your company, and they tell us about like the story behind the company or the brand or the product.
Right. So, and you're finding that involving the story has had a positive feedback, positive return for businesses
Yeah, usually, yeah.
versus not
What do you say?
versus those who don't, for example.
Yep, I think because I don't spend a lot of time like looking at what other people do.
Yeah.
I do just in a sense of like what are other people doing in this industry, but
Right.
I try to really focus myself on what I'm doing and what like I like instead of just like looking at what I think other people are doing wrong.
Right.
But I personally feel that it's more of a long term commitment when you commit to telling a story. It's not like you won't have big result right away, but it's like if you look at Coca Cola or any big brands, they've always told their story like throughout years and
Yeah.
years, and it wasn't big at first, but it
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of time, and that's kind of my approach.
Yeah.
It's just like building and building and constantly like telling a story because you don't want people to forget about your brand.
Yeah, exactly.
See.
Actually, I did a branding video on defining your brand and identity as a way of helping personal brands and business owners incorporate their story into their marketing. And actually touched on Coca-Cola because it's funny you mention it, but they do have very, very good marketing and very good storytelling. And they lean a lot on the story of the end consumer as a way of infusing their product into that story. And so one of the examples that I used was there's this one commercial of a student, what appears to be a student at a museum, and it looks like he has an assignment. He's there to do something, but he just looks disillusioned, lack of creativity. He's just kind of sitting there like this. And one of the paintings that gets animated comes across like a Coca-Cola. And this Coca-Cola makes all the way around the entire museum, and it lands in his hand. And as soon as he drinks this Coca-Cola, he's now energized and has all of this creativity flowing through him. And then he's able to complete his project and hand it into the teacher. And so that kind of like transformation of like, you see the end consumer clearly is struggling. He's lacking something. And that something gets presented to him in the form of a Coca-Cola in this case. And he consumes a product, and then his problem is now resolved. He's now bridged the gap to some sort of resolution, and in this case, be creativity and hydration or whatever Coca-Cola is trying to sell. I don't drink it, but it's a very clever way of infusing storytelling and an emotional way of actually captivating people's attention, which is super powerful, whether you're doing it short form, long form, social media. I think it should be infused into everything, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And they always follow like this arc. Like you have the point A, the person is like at its lowest point. There's a struggle, and then here's the solution. And you always have like this whole peak of like something's happening. The Coca-Cola is flying around. I don't know which one you're talking about, but like it's always the same.
Yeah.
Like flat, and then you have like a peak, and then you have the new normal. Like everything's just like the baseline is just a little bit higher. It's always the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because the way you can tell a story like in very short form is probably like 30 seconds. It's engaging, and like they
Right.
do that well.
The hero's journey.
Yeah.
Character has a problem, and he meets a guide along the way, which is usually the product, the service, the company, the coach, the person that leads them through the hardships of that problem that they're facing, so they can overcome it. And then after they overcome it, then their problem is resolved. Yeah, it's the classic Hollywood formula essentially, except they string it out to 2 or 3 hours. And of course, we have an equally hard job. I gotta say, short form content is very hard.
It is. It is. It's like you have to tell a story in like 30 seconds, and you don't
Yeah,
have the time to like develop really a narrative around the person. The person you have to use like very clear stereotypes.
yeah,
So like the person needs to look sad. If they're
hmm,
sad, like it cannot be implied. It has to like be first degree, but you can always have to also like think of second and third degree at the same
right.
time. It's like it's a good way of practicing storytelling, I think. Even if your end goal is to go to cinema or like do longer form, making short form
Yeah,
is such a good way to like create and develop characters. Like
right.
you learn how to like show your characters in a very concise manner, and then you go further and further, and then you like do longer form as you progress.
Yeah, yeah. I think storytelling is absolutely essential for any business and any individual that is trying to build a brand, a personal brand, a presence online. Storytelling has been around for the longest time. And it's been a great way of passing down narratives and communicating emotionally. And I think if anyone's able to leverage story into their marketing, they're able to captivate attention. And
Totally.
attention right now is the hottest currency. Not sure if you've seen one of Gary Vee's recent video, but he makes it very clear where he's saying attention, attention, attention. If you want to sell in 2024, attention. If you want to have a charity to generate funds for, attention. If you want to, anything that you want to do, it's attention. And when you tie that over to like Grant Cardone, like sell or be sold, and his idea that everything is sales, right? Even this conversation is not like sales of a product and money, but you're selling your ideas, I'm selling my ideas. We're exchanging that. We're selling that exchange of ideas in a way, right?
Yeah.
And now attention is turning to be the number one asset that you can hold. Really, the more followers you have, the more subscribers, the more fans, the more customers that you can bring into your business, the more that you can leverage that attention to channel it towards you need it to wherever you need it to go, right? And it's
Totally.
one of those reasons why personal brands are blowing up right now. Like right now, it's like the perfect time. I mean, the perfect time was yesterday, right? But it's a perfect time for those who haven't started building a personal brand to do that and infusing storytelling into that brand, because that's what people will invest in. That's where people will essentially, that's what's going to buy people into your story, into your business, your brand. It's like, do I connect with you? Do I resonate with what you're saying? This sounds like something that's for me. And it's something that like businesses, like corporations have been using for like so long, right? But I think social media has finally allowed the end user, the consumer, the creator to take control of that storytelling ability and start infusing it themselves. Something that before, if you wanted to like do something, you had to like have a show or have something that was a bit more produced. And now you can just grab your phone, grab a free editing app, and create your own stories. And whether you're selling something or not, captivating the attention is massive.
Yeah. And it's wide open. Like you said, now it's like everybody can do it. And I feel like it's fun because it liberates from those big gatekeepers. Now it's
Yeah.
like if you have a story to tell, you can tell it no matter the gear you have, no matter like how much money you have. As long as you can afford like a half decent phone, you can tell your story. Then that's what exciting.
Yeah, definitely. There's you know, Casey Neistat has been, you know, a great leader in the YouTube world, but also like in the social media and short form. When I say short form in this particular case, I'm talking YouTube, and compared to like traditional long story narrative, like cinema and stuff. But you know, he's been able to create, when he was doing his vlogs, short form stories, 10 minutes long every single day, and was able to blow up absolutely
Yeah.
because of his storytelling. The way he starts his videos, how he always has a message. There's always like a climax that you're wanting to reach at some point in the video that'll make you stick around till like 3/4, and then some sort of resolution at the end that like you actually end up watching the whole 10 minutes. And it's
Yeah.
just a day in the life, and you think to yourself, what can be so exciting in someone's life? And in reality, it could be a lot or it could be nothing, but it just depends on how you tell that story, right?
It is, because a lot of his vlogs, like, let's face it, a lot of his vlogs is just him
Yeah.
going around his normal life in New York, and he's like, okay, so I'm going to go to dinner to that place, and it's just the way he tells the story, and he doesn't care about like image quality as much. He just like brings you along, and he's like on his boosted board around New York and developing also like his vlog, the way it works and the way it like the reason why it's so enticing is because he develops characters throughout his whole vlog. So you
Yeah.
have his boosted board, which is in itself a character. So you know when he's going on that, there's like a couple of things that are going to happen, and you know like when he meets his wife, there's something that's going to happen with his wife. So you always have like a lot of in one bigger story, which is like his vlog. You always have like pockets of like little stories all the time.
Yeah.
So it always brings you like, oh, to the next thing. And then there's like this little thing happening, and he meets his wife, and his wife is just like giving advice on a relationship. And then he goes somewhere else and he talks about like gear. And then you always have like pocket stories within the bigger story, within like the whole story, which is like his life,
Yeah.
which like is like a bunch of little vlogs, which I find
Yeah.
very interesting.
He also he did something pretty early on that is now adopted across, I think, most people that are doing short form content, and it's like hooks. Like he always had really good either verbal hooks, like maybe he'll ask a question or present a problem at the beginning that makes you go, huh, okay, like I'm intrigued, tell me more. Or he'll have visual hooks, some sort of like edit that would make you want to watch a little bit more, because he'll tease you a little bit at the beginning of the video as to what's to come, and you just know that if you stick around and you watch the whole thing, you'll end up kind of relieving that curiosity of like, okay,
Yeah.
what's happening? What do, like, I want to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. And one thing I find really interesting about Casey is he kind of like made it so approachable. And he always like stressed the fact that he edited on, I think it's iMovie.
Something like that. It was something pretty
Like some,
simple.
I think it's like a free software. He never used like high end camera. He's always like been using cheaper. He's always used like the cheapest camera he could find. He tried like bigger camera, but he always said like his favorite were like the small point and shoots,
Yeah.
which made it kind of brought that in a sense like it brought this art form, which is filmmaking, and just made it so available to everyone, and it liberated a lot of people that wanted to make film but thought they had to like buy an Alexa or like a red or a big camera. And he's like, no, you just need anything, you can tell your story with anything, which I think it liberated a lot of us as a filmmaker, and it made us realize that we can make films with almost nothing.
100%, man. I feel that I feel like for the longest time I was putting so much emphasis and attention towards the gear and the tools that I thought that were necessary in order for me to be able to tell the story, when in reality it's not the tools, but it's the story itself. And he did a great job, like you're mentioning, because he did in a lot of his videos, he would be intentional about treating his gear a certain way that made a lot of people go crazy. It'd be like, like, how can you like hold your camera like that? Or he'll like drop it or something. You'd be like, no, that's so expensive, you know? And he'd put duct tape on them, grab a Sharpie and like, you know, black out the name. And it's like all these things that are like a big no-no for a lot of people. But the whole point of that was just to say like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what
gear
you're
is
using.
just gear.
Gear's just gear. And yes, it's nice to have nicer gear when you know how to tell a story to begin with, right? So that's I was going to save this for later, but why don't we do a quick hot seat, because I have some things on gear here that I think tie right into the conversation.
Go ahead.
Just give me 1 sec to make sure that my camera is still all good. And it's all good. All right.
Awesome.
So came up with a few questions just as a hot seat tie into this. So new microphone or new camera? Which one would you choose?
New microphone.
New
all
microphone.
the way.
And why is that?
Yeah. Because I feel like camera have reached such like they've peaked. Like camera have peaked such a long time ago, and I feel like recently everything that's coming out is just like the same thing, rehash and with like marginal improvement. So if you have almost any camera today, you're good. Like you have a good camera, and nowadays even phones are good. And I feel that if you have money to invest, it's always better to invest in a good microphone, because audio is such like it's such a big tool, it's such a big part of storytelling that we often forget. So if you're willing to spend a little bit of money, spend it on microphone all the way, and light.
Yeah. Yeah,
All the way.
I completely agree with you. I remember when I was my second year of university, I needed to buy a camera because I was starting to do photography and filmmaking then. And I bought a Canon T5i. And at the time, it had 1080p video, autofocus with face detection. Very like, you know, first iteration of it type of thing. But it worked really well. And we're still using 1080p to this day, you know, 10 years later. So you're right. Like the improvements that have been happening in terms of cameras have been like bit rates, color science, file formats. You know, there's been some changes with cameras with like going mirrorless, like making the cameras more compact. But in terms of like a drastic change in quality, besides like resolution, there hasn't been that much. Versus microphones, I remember back when I was in university, we had the Rode Video Mic Pro, I think it was called, that would go on top of the camera.
Yeah.
And that was like basically, it was a shotgun mic, and that was basically as good as you can get unless you invested in like a $600 like lavalier wireless microphone system that like was mainly saved for pro audio or professional productions. And now you can get those like tiny little Rode and DJI Bluetooth microphones that they hook up to your phone, they hook up to your camera, but the quality of the audio has just drastically changed. And it's made a lot of videos and possibilities for videos. Like you see a lot of TikTokers and YouTube short creators, you know, interviewing people out in the street. And the fact that they can have a cell phone recording it from like 20 meters away and be able to have clear audio and you can hear it makes that content usable. Versus if they were just relying on the audio that comes from the camera, it was basically useless content. You couldn't really hear it.
Yeah. That and like these little, I think it's the Rode Mic GoPro or something like that. It's now 32-bit float. And the audio codecs have come such a long way. Like I remember starting out, and it was you had to like have these whole like this big board, like they were huge to record like decent
Mm-hmm.
audio. It was kind of complicated, it was convoluted, it
Yeah.
was hard, and as a one man band, like it was not out of reach, but it was always more complicated. And whereas, like you say, now you can just have these little thing that record 32-bit floats, and the audio is so good. And we also have like now AI that is able to like isolate this audio to make it sound even better. I think we're like that's where technology is going right now. That's what is like pushing. That's what's being pushed right now, and that's what is making a big difference in audio. Now we're having like so good like better microphone that we've ever had, and for
Yeah.
cheaper. So a microphone
100%.
is
Microphone's
hundred
the way to
percent.
go. So
Yeah,
if anyone out there is looking to upgrade something, you got a little bit of money and you want to improve your quality, go for the mic. Go
microphone.
for the mic first. Your phone will do a great job. Plus, I mean, a camera highly depends on how you use it anyways, right?
Mm-hmm.
How you're framing your shot, what story you're telling, not so much can it record or not. All right. So you mentioned lighting. So here's my next question. Natural light or artificial lighting?
That's a hard one. That's a
It
hard
is.
one because natural light, like I love natural light, obviously. I think if you can time it properly, and that's one of the thing. Natural light, you have to time it properly. You have
Yeah.
to like if you want to have that beautiful soft light, you have to film at a specific hour.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like not always the best. Whereas with artificial light, I'm team artificial light because let's say I was filming the other day and we needed to have like a beautiful sunset vibe in the house,
Mm-hmm.
but like the quality of that light only lasts so long. Like if you're lucky enough, like because at this season right now, it's like great most of the time in Quebec,
Yeah.
or like you have like the sun, like it's night out and it's 4:30 here and it's pitch black.
Right.
So we don't have a lot of sun. But when you film and you need to have that sunset vibe, you can't wait. You can't wait for the right time, and you never like you can only have like 5 minutes to film.
Right.
So artificial light allows you to just like set your light in a certain way and have as much time as possible to like film that light. And you
Mm-hmm.
can also like cheat it and just massage your whole scene with like couple lights. So I'm team artificial light just because of the control it gives me,
Right.
and on a commercial set because you can't just like depend on nature.
Right. So some things that come to mind is like if someone is trying to create content for social media, YouTube, something for themselves, like create their own content. If they don't have a light, it's good to maybe go by the window at the right time. Like obviously you
Mhm.
don't want a ray of sunlight hitting your face because that's going to be very visible. But say right now it's a little bit overcast right now and it's a nice diffuse light, natural light will do really well.
Yeah.
But like you said, having the artificial light will just kind of standardize things. If you have like a long recording, like right now, I have
Hmm.
an artificial, I got a couple lights here and they're doing a good job of keeping the lighting consistent. So
Yeah.
it's not going to get darker or brighter, at least not my face. Things around me may. Good, good,
That's
good.
yeah.
Okay. Taking it back to microphones, maybe I should have done this one earlier, but if you're going to choose a microphone for a home studio, which one would you choose? A lavalier mic or a shotgun mic?
Hmm. For a home studio, I'd go for a lavalier.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easier, it's portable. You can just clip it on yourself.
Yeah.
And if you go for like the tiny road ones, like you can just hold it like such, and you have attachment as
Yeah.
well, which makes it like way easier to use.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with with microphone is, for me, they're so dependent on the usage.
Oh yeah.
I personally love shotgun mics because it gives you like a lot of like a better room tone.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have like more like spatial like awareness of what's going on, so it's gonna be more natural area. Whereas with like lavalier, you're gonna have a lot of like your body vibration. You're gonna have a lot of like your throat sound. So I would always go for both if I can.
Yeah.
But if it's for yourself and or like in a home studio and you don't want to like set up your shotgun mic, lavalier is the easier one.
Yeah. Also, like if you're running ACs, that's something that, I'm in Mexico. So even right now I have the AC on. So if I'm using a shotgun mic, like you're saying, it does capture more of that ambient noise. So I can hear things like my refrigerator. I can hear things like my AC. So we actually just shot a YouTube video down here with Jasmina, and I decided to use a lavalier mic. We just clipped it on, and it actually got rid of a lot of that ambient noise and really just focused that sound coming from her. And for the same reason, we just invested in new microphones. Not this one here. This one was lent to me by a friend, but I bought a similar one to this
Okay.
for our YouTube videos because it gets hot here and we do need the ACs. And I rather save myself time in post and get a clean audio signal having a condenser mic a dynamic microphone and putting it close to me than using a microphone that's gonna include all those ambient noises when I'm essentially for YouTube videos and stuff. For at least the ones that I'm doing, like I want to hear my voice. I don't necessarily want to hear my gardener or the cleaning lady or anything else at the same time. I just want to hear my voice. And it makes it easier to then put some music in the background and I'm all good. But
have you tried Adobe Podcaster?
I have actually.
It's so good.
It is very good. All of our social media videos or reels that we made a batch of like 45 or so videos that we recorded in a couple of days. And all of those went through Adobe Podcaster. And at the time, you can only like upload the audio, and it would be a set amount of like AI modification. But now they have a slider, so you can tell it out of like 0 to 100, like how much effect you want it to do.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because like it makes your voice sound really, really good.
Yeah. What I personally do is I think it's even sometimes a little bit too powerful. Like your voice sounds so isolated.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but what I do is like always like take that track and layer it with like the normal track, so that way you have like a mix of both, so your voice doesn't sound too isolated.
Yeah. In fact, Adobe Podcaster saved me on a bigger production I had earlier this year because we got good audio. We had so the video team that we worked with, they used a lavalier mic and they hung it from above, and that was essentially supposed to be like the main microphone. I had opted for it to be a shotgun mic, so it would be more directional for their voice. But anyways, we used the lav mic hanging from right above their head. And I had a backup microphone on my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema, which was maybe 1.5 meters from the subject. And yes, it was more ambient, but that was the microphone that I ended up using because it had a much richer tone. And because it is a shotgun mic and it's a condenser, it was capturing some of the AC, especially in a corporate environment. And one of the feedback I got was like, hey, is there any way to like clean up the audio a little bit more? And I spent maybe like an hour and a half like toying around in is it Fairlight on Resolve?
Yeah. Resolve, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Fairlight. And I was like, okay, like I'll put a compressor and I'll put a limiter and I'll raise the volume and I'll do all these things. And it just wasn't giving me that like nice audio. So I was like, okay, fuck, I'm going to try Adobe Podcaster. And I put it through and it cleaned up the audio so darn well that when I put it back in the video, it was like, oh, it sounds so amazing. And you can like hear the subjects like so clearly. It's crazy. If Adobe Podcaster wasn't out, I would have spent a lot more time, I think,
Yeah.
working
And
on the audio.
that's so weird that like I don't want to diss the video production team, but that they just hang lavalier from the top because the lavalier is made to be close and it's made to record like to be on the body because the way it records audio is like through your chest or through your throat. So it needs that bassier tone. Otherwise, it's gonna sound like super thin.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it sounded. It had no bass to it, no body to it. The reason why is because we had a shotgun microphone, one of those really long ones, like the Shure. I forget what they're called, or you know, like I think you have one of those. They're like really long and thin.
Yeah.
And we had it in a big like boom enclosure and everything. It was an XLR microphone, but it wasn't working. And like
Weird.
we were maybe like an hour into prep, into getting everything ready for the set, and like audio was the one thing that was kind of holding us back. So we're like, okay, like if this microphone isn't working, well, what's the alternative? Okay, we'll put my shotgun mic instead above, but then it uses a completely different plug that wouldn't have allowed us to run it all the way through to the cameras. So then we're like, okay, I guess we'll use that as the backup and we'll run the shotgun mic in front of the subject because we always had a camera centered right in the middle. And we'll run that as a primary audio, and it worked out. I also felt it was a bit strange, and for next time, I think it'd be beneficial to have extra microphones.
Always.
Because you never know what's going to happen on set. So thankfully, I did have 2 other mics on set, and both of those ended up saving our asses. It was the lavalier mic and the shotgun mic. Crazy.
Always have backups.
Always. Okay, so all right, this one will be more for like content creators. Teleprompter, yes or no?
It depends. It's always I personally never use teleprompters because when I do interviews or when I talk to like the camera, I like to have an idea of where it's going. And when I have an interview, I like to have it be a discussion to be more like open and be more not as planned. That way, I find it's more natural. But it's hard to say that I'm against a prompter. I think it's always dependent on what type of content you're doing. Because like I said, I don't use them because I feel like it's very formulaic. Like they're like people tend to like say exactly what they see. And that's why they're good for, because sometimes like you want your subject to say something exactly. But I personally much prefer having conversation. So it's just a matter of style.
Yeah, I agree with you. We use teleprompters for some of our content, actually for most now. I didn't used to before, but in terms of like time, I feel like it saves me time to have my notes in front of me and be able to like reference them. Not so much like read a script, because when you read a script, you definitely sound a bit more like robotic and you know, you're reading a script, but to at least have the notes in front of you and it look relatively natural at the same time. So we picked up a teleprompter, we've been using it, and I've been finding it very beneficial, but not in the way that I originally thought it was going to be. I originally thought, hey, I'll write a script and I'll just read it through. But like you're saying, you end up sounding like so scripted. So I think teleprompters have like a really good role to play if you're someone that is maybe creating longer form content or a lot of content at once where you're touching on different points, and maybe you're creating like 10 or 15 different shorts or reels, and like, well, you're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different stuff. So to have that, maybe the points could be beneficial, but Yeah, once you start seeing the eyes and maybe even the head
Yeah.
go left and right, it's kind of like you're just reading it off. It doesn't mean that it's bad though, because if anything, it means that the content was intentional. Someone took the time to write it.
Yeah, totally.
So it just takes away that conversationalness.
Yeah.
For this next round of reels that we're going to be filming, we're actually going to be. I'm going to try a different style. I'm going to try the style where I have my notes beside me and I kind of read them off to myself first, just so that they're fresh in my head. And then I try and recite that back to the camera in the most natural way possible. I may add a word or two, or maybe change the structure of my sentence as I talk naturally. But at least it's a way to have my notes with me and not necessarily reference them verbatim and be talking exactly where I wrote down. All right. Okay, this one. Hire an editor or learn to edit yourself.
Ooh. I think at first you should learn to edit yourself. When
Yeah.
you start, because I think when you start, there's something about doing everything on your own.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a big proponent of like hiring other people,
Yeah.
I think because it gives you kind of like this idea of like what an editor needs. So
Mm-hmm.
if you start by learning how to edit yourself, you're gonna know that maybe you should like hold your shot extra seconds, so that way it's not like the editor have a little bit more leeway into cutting.
Mm-hmm.
All these little things. But as you progress, I personally think that hiring an editor is beneficial. I personally am in a place in my career where I want to like hire somebody to edit, because the way I see it is that now the time I spend editing, I don't spend searching for clients.
Right.
The time I spend editing, I don't spend becoming a better DP or a better producer. And also, like, I don't like editing. I don't like being behind a screen and just like for hours. I don't have this type of personality, so I would rather hire someone. And also, like, when you hire a specialized editor, they're going to be way better than you, unless you want to be an editor or unless you like being like this like one man band. I feel having an editor is going to be like someone who's going to be better at pacing a video than I personally am, and that's why like hire 100% when you're there.
But you're such a good editor. You are very good. I do admire
Thanks.
your work a lot. But yeah,
I just
go on.
I just don't like it. It's
Yeah.
funny because I know I'm good at editing. I know like how to pace a video, but it's so, to me it's just it comes from like this painful place of having to like sit and look at the same footage over and over again and being like miserable. Like editing makes me miserable. It's weird because I'm there and I'm like, I fucking hate it. I love
Mhm.
coloring. I love color grading. It's just like putting a video together. I hate it.
Right. Yeah, it's tedious, definitely. The last YouTube video that I put together must have had, I don't know, maybe like over 50, 60 shots. So like between the B-roll and me talking and the different takes, it's a lot of media to go through, and that takes a lot of time because you need to watch, you need to understand what you're editing. But like you said, I agree with you. If you're considering hiring an editor, it'd be worth your while to edit a few videos yourself, just to get the sense, like just seeing it from like an efficiency standpoint. Sure, it may take some time to like edit the first few, right? But what do you gain out of that? Well, you understand the video creating process. And then when you record your videos and give them to an editor, you have a ability to create better content, so your editor can edit better content for you as well. Like
Totally.
We've worked with well, it's been with a few clients, but where they're like their audio isn't synchronized. They're using like a wireless microphone or something, and we got the video, and it's like, "Hey, my name is," and it's like, there is a 3-second delay between your video and your audio, right? Had they taken that into an editing program, they would be like, "Oh shit, my audio's messed up. I'm gonna go fix that," right? But because they're not involved in the editing process, kind of like, "Oh, video's done. Send it to the editor." Get to the editing room, and it's like, ugh. Now I have to like match the audio to the mouth moving for 10 clips. And, that ends up taking time. So those like little things that you can just learn on like, okay, maybe I can do better B-roll, or I can frame my shot better, or I can place my microphone somewhere better, light better. It's definitely worth. But like you said, I think I agree with you now. And I'm putting it into practice now of hiring an editor. We have an editor now, and he's really good at just grabbing our vision, putting it together how we want it to be put together. And like you said, putting your time now into money-making activities is the more beneficial for your business, because if you're trying to learn to be an editor and you're trying to learn to be the best at that, well, what about your business? It's much better to learn how to sell, learn how to attract customers to your business, and put your time towards that versus trying to put your time to the things that you may enjoy, which are great, but they're not necessarily going to grow your business, right? Not when you can leverage the money that you're bringing in from your business to allow your business to grow even more. So I would say if you're someone that has even a little bit of experience editing on your phone, and you're like, okay, this is taking too much of my time, and I'm not allowing myself to reach out to people, I'm not allowing myself to get into meetings because of that, hire an editor. Hire an editor, get them to do 100%. A better job. Definitely. Okay, so favorite platform to share value on, and we're talking social media platform. So what is your favorite platform?
I personally love YouTube. Like YouTube for me is like, it's one of the best platform because it allows for I personally think it allows for like longer form content and like deeper and more research content. And that's kind of what I gravitate towards. That's kind of personally what I like. And just the fact that you can go on there and watch like somebody like Spencer Sakurai just release his end of year recap, and it's like a 45-minute video where he goes into like details about like why he used that camera, why he did that, why like he felt that way. I personally love that. Whereas like I feel like on Instagram, and I don't want to diss any platform because they're all good. I just feel like that Instagram is very like, it's like five tip to do this, or like it's very short form content, and it's very like, it's like 30-second or less.
Yeah.
Whereas like on YouTube, it's like more like longer form, more informative, more like it gives you more time to connect with someone.
Definitely. Yeah. I have to agree with you. As much as I like Instagram, I feel like YouTube is the platform to deliver and take on, or not take on. It's a platform to like deliver and consume in-depth, valuable content. And I think like the fact that you have a window of maybe 10 to 15 minutes of attention span is really, really good to be able to get into a topic a bit more in depth and be able to communicate a particular message with more substance than it is on, like, say, Instagram Shorts. So for that, I think it's one of the best platforms to grow. And it's been like, I don't think it's ever too late to hop on YouTube, but there are creators out there that are filling in the gaps of all the topics that you could think of. There's creators now making videos on that. So I'd say if you want to share your value and build your brand as quick as possible, it'd be a combination of long form content where you can share in-depth knowledge and value to your audience, and also leveraging those messages and reiterating them into a short form content platform such as Instagram and TikTok and even YouTube Shorts, because it's a good way to kind of sprinkle the little bits of value that you're able to share in the videos, as well as driving some traffic to the long form video. Like, if you enjoyed this bit, check out the full podcast or check out the full video where we get more in depth into those things, right? I find that Instagram attention span, and this actually ties into a question that we get asked often as a social media agency, is like, what platform should I be on, right? Well, the answer to that is, where's your audience hanging out, right? If you're talking to someone that is young and has a short attention span, and when we say short, we're talking 2 to 3 seconds. It's like, well, where are they spending more of their time, right? And if your content is a little bit, or your message or your value is a little bit more dense, then getting into YouTube and those platforms would be very beneficial, because you have the allowance to spend a little bit more time talking and sharing that.
Yep.
Definitely.
The way I see it is like Instagram is like when you go fishing, Instagram is the bait on the hook. And then like you reel them on YouTube, and then you cook the fish, and you show them how to cook the fish on YouTube.
Yeah. And you know what? We've been sharing a lot of shorts on YouTube, and they've done quite well. A few of them have gotten over 10, 15,000 plays.
Nice.
And now YouTube has a feature where you can actually link a short to a YouTube video. So if someone's enjoying the short and the bit of content that you're sharing, there's a button where you can click on, and it'll take you to the long form piece of content. So this is great if you're cool. If you're remixing, because they have the remix feature. So if you put out a long piece of content and you want to remix it into a short, you just click it, select the bit of content, and then you can share it. So it's been good, because it's been driving more traffic to our page. And it's been a really good tool to leverage. And some videos, like one video on Instagram that we shared, I think last week, has 220,000 plays.
Nice.
So it's really good for like short form content, and Instagram is like really good for exposure, to get people to like hear about you, know about you, and spark some curiosity, and then drive that traffic to your channel. I think, like you said, it's like it's kind of like fishing. It's a good platform to like throw your hook out there and hook people in, but eventually, like, you want to drive those people towards somewhere, whether it's like a newsletter or somewhere where you can captivate their attention longer form. Maybe giving them a freebie or a YouTube video they can watch and subscribe to, and become more invested in your brand versus just the short form stuff.
Totally.
Yeah. It's crazy to see that growth. I was just like, we've been posting daily for over 100 days, and I think like 105 days now, and just kind of like waiting for when is a post gonna blow up, because you never really know which one it's gonna be. It depends on so many things. It depends on your cover, your hook, your message, what time of day it is, on so many things. Like, you don't really know. And then like the one that does get more traction is the one that I didn't think was going to get the most traction, right? So it kind of leads to another point I wanted to talk to you about, in terms of like perfectionism, and how much time and energy you put into a single piece of content when you have, if you have like a progress bar from 0 to 100, right now in our age, we're probably at like 15% of the amount of content we're ever going to create in our lives. We got a lot of content to go. And if we got stuck on like each little piece of content, we're never really going to reach that 100, right? So I've been taking this approach of like, you know what? Get it out there. Don't make it sloppy. Don't make it so it looks bad on you, but put in sufficient effort to communicate effectively and make your workflow efficient, so you can communicate more value than putting all your time into little things. Because there's been some videos that I'll spend, a couple hours on, and then they end up getting like 150, 200 views, and it's like, I don't think the payback for the amount of effort is there. And then yet the video that we spent the least amount on, right? It was more so on the caption, on the copy, versus the video edit that I think hooked people in. And we wouldn't have reached there if we didn't post, I think, 120 pieces of content or so in the last 100 days. So it's been a lot of that. I got another question here. Let's see. Okay. So for content creators, business owners, personal brand people, what would be the 3 pieces of equipment that you would recommend to jumpstart their online presence?
That's a good one. I think there is a holy trifecta, which is light, audio, and visual.
Yeah.
And 3 pieces of do you mean 3 pieces of gear? Or
Yeah, 3 pieces of gear, and it could be any. I know the obvious, but if you can think of any others.
I mean, the obvious would be a camera.
Yeah.
I think for that you can either decide to invest into like a good phone. Like
Okay.
if you already have a phone, or you're already going to spend money on a phone, just invest a little bit more in your phone, or go to like the point and shoot route. Nowadays you have like good point and shoot cameras that cover a lot of range and they're good enough. And then I think the 2 biggest pieces for me would be a microphone, because like
Yeah.
we said, audio is very important, and you'd rather have an okay, like I did a lot of my first few contract with that camera.
Okay, the RX100.
Yeah, it's super old, but back then, like I did a couple music videos, I did like corporate interviews and stuff like that on that, and it did the job. The thing that really set it apart was having great audio. Back then, I had like a H4n with like a shotgun mic, and having light to me has always been like the one big thing, because if you have a good camera but you have shit light, you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to have like super harsh light and super deep shadows, and it's going to be a pain in the ass, because even like
Yeah.
the best camera is not going to be able to like work with that. Whereas if you have an okay camera but you invest in a good powerful light, I think you can like make miracles. Like I could film, and sometimes I do film with that, not like in corporate gigs, but like for myself, or like things for personal thing. And just the fact that I have like a good powerful light makes it so like you can barely see the difference between like a higher end camera and that, just because you can have like a big soft source, and if you have that nice audio, I think you're golden.
Yeah. So if you already have, well, basically everybody has a phone now.
Yep.
So if you have a phone, you got a camera. So get a better
Yep.
phone if you have an old phone, right? You don't want to be shooting on an iPhone 6.
No.
At least go to like an iPhone like 10, 11 minimum to get something out of it. You don't have to go to 13, 14 with the cinematic. Microphone. So maybe like a Bluetooth lavalier mic,
Yep. That'd be the best.
and light. And if not a light, because you can use natural lighting, what about hard drives? Storage.
Oh yeah, storage.
That's a big
I think
one.
that's a big one. I think it's very important. If you already have your phone, let's say you already have a phone, you invest in light, invest in microphone, and invest in storage,
Yeah.
because that's
yeah.
that's one of the thing where it's such a boring, it's something that's so boring to buy. You go at Costco and you're like, you have to buy, and you always want to have two, like two of the same, because you always want to have like at least 2 copy, because the one copy is like having nothing, and 2 is the minimum, because
Yeah.
if one of the 2 fails, you have a backup of your backup. But the thing is, it's so boring. You go at Costco, you pay $500, and you only have like two things that are not lenses. They're not light. They're nothing, and it's just like I'm gonna put my files on there, and they're gonna sit there, and probably like for most of my life, I'm never gonna have to have like two.
Mm-hmm.
What there you're probably if you're lucky enough, none of your hard drive will ever fail, and you're going to be like, "Fuck, I wasted so much money." But the day one of those hard drive fails, that's when you're going to thank yourself for like having always two copies. I've
Oh
lost
yeah.
like it happened once in my life where I lost like everything. Like for like my the first third of my career, I would always just like put everything on the one, and
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden like that one hard drive fell and I lost my whole portfolio.
Oh man, I had a
Yeah.
scare like that too. I think you may have helped me out a little bit during that time, but I was defragmenting one of my hard drives, and as I was doing that, it corrupted the hard drive, and I was unable to access the information. And I went to full panic mode because I was trying to make some room on it and just kind of defragment it. That's when it writes data on a whole bunch of different parts of the drive versus it being all organized. And then I was just literally ready to create a copy and put it into storage. And that's right before I made a copy of it. That's when it happened. And oh man, I was freaking out. So if you are starting to create content for yourself, do yourself the favor of having backups, at least two backups, like JP saying. One just so it's a real backup, and the other one, consider it, just a necessity. And it doesn't cost that much. You can spend like 150 bucks maybe for a 6 or 8 terabyte drive. You can dump a whole bunch of footage, make sure it's organized, and then duplicate that.
Mm-hmm.
Because long gone are the days of having things in physical form. And like, if you go to my parents' basement, they have a room where they keep all their winter coats, and then they have a big bookshelf with all their photo albums, right? So if I ever wanted to see a photo, I can like physically go there and I know it's there. And they have all the negatives, and we can always make more copies. But when you're talking digital, like if you drop your hard drive, you could lose everything you have. And you don't want to lose everything you have when everything's digital, because I feel like it's something that, and I'll speak for myself, but I notice this with other people too, is like it's kind of like disregarded at this moment in time. But like when I have kids in the future, or when, bless you,
Thanks.
when there's kids in the picture, or just later in life, whenever like, hey, like, remember that time, we lived in Mexico or went down to Guatemala or whatever. Oh, what happened? Do you have any of those photos? Oh no, I lost my phone. It's like, oh, okay. So it's like that part of your life might as well just not have happened if you don't have any memories to look back on years and years later, right?
Yep.
So backing up your phone, backing up all that. And then especially if you want to be a content creator and tell stories, you can only tell stories through content with content, right?
Yep.
So like if you want to talk about that time that, your birthday last year, or the time that you did this or that, having that footage is extremely important, and it's an asset.
It is.
Every photo that you take, every video that you film on your phone, consider it an asset, because sure, it's just maybe a photo sitting there, but it depends how you use it. If you can leverage that photo to be beneficial for you into storytelling, like we were talking earlier, and if you don't have that, you are shit out of luck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to be in that situation.
No, you don't. And the reliance on like cloud storage. I think that's one of the things we take for granted. Like cloud storage is amazing, but the thing is, if tomorrow like Google decides that you have way too many footage, and they decide that they're just going to nuke everything because now they decided that you don't have unlimited space for your photos, and they send you like a message that says like, hey, if you don't back up these photos, they're going to get nuked. I mean, like, it can happen like that. We
Oh
rely
yeah.
on those companies to have like good faith, but they're businesses. At some point, they're going to be like, that's way too much storage. We're going to nuke everything. And then you're going to lose everything because you basically relied on someone else to store your thing. So just buy a hard drive. It's so
Yeah.
cheap.
Buy a hard drive, have a copy of it. So yeah, so storage then. Have lots of backups.
Always.
Um oh, okay. I wanted to ask you kind of like for business owners wanting to create content to grow their brand, what would be like a couple of extremely important pieces of content that they can create, either invest in to someone to create for them or create themselves? Like, what kind of videos can they make that are going to be like the most impactful for the business?
I think at first it's always you want to show who's behind the business. That's one of the things I tell to people that want to create content is like, have you shown yourself first? Because yes, it's cool to have a nice, a good looking ad, but especially if you're starting out nowadays, like you're not one of those big company that can be faceless. Like you have to have a face. You have to like connect with people on an intimate level. So like just put yourself out there. And it's to me it would be as easy as just like taking your phone and filming yourself doing the thing you're doing and like bringing people behind the scene, behind like how what you're doing in your daily basis about like how you run your business, well, like how you make your thing, why you're passionate about, like the why behind your business, because I think it gives people like it humanizes your business.
Oh, yeah. So it makes me think of like what traditionally would be called or referred to as like corporate content. Of course, in a international business type of setting, corporate cookie cutter, there's a reason why they use that, right? To communicate their values. In a small business setting, though, the principle still applies of communicating your quote unquote corporate values, even if you're not corporate. Just essentially, what does your business stand for? What is your business about? What kind of quality and attention do you put into the services and the products that you offer? And bringing the audience behind the scenes as to how you go about delivering that product or service, right? It creates like a sense of transparency, trust, and it helps people see what you offer and how you offer it so they can see themselves using it
Yep.
as well, right? And the other piece that you said would be like kind of like an ad or something that is a bit more direct.
I think that would be like the second step because
The second piece?
yeah, the second piece because that's when you have like enough. I feel like enough social capital when your audience is ready to like hear you talk about not only yourself but like sell them like something. And because I feel ads, as much as I like making ads and I think they're a good thing, I think there has to be more than that nowadays to like a brand. So ad would be the second one. So you start by corporate or like you don't have to be cookie cutter sitting down and just talking. You can like just take a walk and show people around your business, show how you like wrap your jewelry and then send them and like do like bring along or like sew along or like whatever you're making, like bring people along and then you just advertise whatever you're selling afterwards.
Right. So like incorporating storytelling into the video, right? And bring people behind the scenes. I think like there's a lot of overlap with what we've been talking about earlier, and that's like marketing is changing. You know, it's not what it was before. Like before, there was such a there were limitations on who would create content, how you would create content. Like if you had a camera, you know, if you knew how to tell a story. if you even had a computer to edit it and put it together.
Mm-hmm.
But now all those tools are available, and the demand for content that is deeper than the surface is there. Like
Yep.
people want to know like who you are, like what you do, like what do you do on a daily basis, how you got to where you are now. And the reason why they want to know that is because so many people are doing that already, that it's creating this like need and this like trend that's kind of the content, or that's the way that things are heading.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So yeah, I agree with you. I think creating content that shows it doesn't have to be cookie cutter with like our values are blah blah blah, integrity and honesty, but just by being, by having integrity in your videos, by being honest and transparent in your videos,
Mm-hmm.
you are communicating those values, right? And like I'd say like back in the day it was, you would create one video that would kind of communicate that all. And now in the content era, it's kind of like you got to create like 10 or 15 videos that communicate and reinforce kind of the same messages in different
Mm-hmm.
ways, different like iterations of your message, of your value, so people can consume it in various ways,
Yep.
right? Yeah. There's so much content out there. There's so much content going out there now that to just have one piece of content communicate something that is critically important to your business is not enough. So having the additional layer of different types of content and different ways of joining in on the social conversation that is happening is a great way to have your voice heard. And I was talking to Jazz about this yesterday because we're thinking like, okay, well, if you want to be relevant in social media, you have to jump on the trends, right? But how do you jump on the trends? And I kind of see it like if you were to walk into a room that's full of 100 people, right? 100 people is a good amount of people for you to not be able to talk to every single one of them unless you're talking to all of them at once. So the only way you can go about talking to everyone is by joining little groups throughout the evening until you've kind of talked to all 100 people, right? So if you see that a group is gathering and they're talking about cars at this current moment in time in the evening, you joining in that conversation and talking about your car is going to have you heard by the 10 or 15 people that are talking about a popular topic, right? Versus maybe there's another group of 3 people over there talking about like, I don't know, bubblegum. That's clearly not a trending topic. It's not really attracting many people into that little circle. So maybe that's not the conversation to jump into at that time, right? So go to the circle where they're talking about cars. And then maybe that conversation dies down and someone else is talking about a movie and you see 15 or 20 people gather and they start talking about this movie. Hopping over there and jumping onto that conversation will have you basically exposed to more people. By the end of the night, you've talked to more people.
Yep.
Then by, choosing to start your own conversation, well, unfortunately, unless you have the authority and the following to be able to start your own conversations, it's going to be really hard to have people regard you as a conversation worth having. And it's funny because I was telling Jazz, like, Joe Rogan sometimes is a trendsetter, as is Elon Musk. They'll tweet these things, and just because they have the authority of being Joe Rogan or like being Elon Musk, it's like just because it's them, they're able to kind of like start the ball rolling on a conversation. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that little ball turns into like a big ball by the time it's kind of gone down the social conversation and like so many people join into that topic. And sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. But they have the authority to be able to like say something and have people listen. And if you don't have that authority, then the best thing that you can do is join in on those conversations, say your piece, be heard, and contribute to the conversation so you can become more relevant and eventually grow your own authority through your own perspective on certain topics. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. That's my way of seeing it.
No, it makes sense. I can see how it applies.
Mm-hmm. Like, for example, like I was also using this example yesterday with Jazz, but like the Harlem Shake, mm-hmm. if I wanted to like, invent or reinvent or recreate the Harlem Shake now, well, it's not going to be really relevant. Like, sure, my video can be funny, but like that's not the current conversation. But what could have been really good is when the Harlem Shake came out, to make your own video. And that video could have reached thousands, if not millions of people through the virality of the subject matter, right? And that alone could skyrocket your account from maybe a few hundred followers to a few thousand followers, just because people aligned. You had so much exposure that you allowed yourself so many more opportunities for people to relate to you, even if thereafter you start creating other types of content. Yeah, you may lose some followers here and there, but at least you got exposed. And like they say, you know, not propaganda, what's the word? Press.
Mm-hmm.
Any press is good press,
Yep.
right? Because even if it's bad press, hey, the fact that everyone's talking about you is putting the attention on you. So how can you captivate that attention and redistribute it or point that attention somewhere else that can then be beneficial to you?
Yeah.
Right. So we're seeing on social media, and that's how one of our recent reels got over 200,000 views or plays, is because we joined a trend, a style of video that people were sharing that is relevant right now, and people are wanting to consume that type of content. So we join the conversation with our own version of it, sharing our own value or story, and then clearly certain people resonated with it, and we're like, awesome, like I'll watch that and I'll share it. And it's like, sweet, somebody heard me.
Nice.
Now just you got to keep doing that over and over again.
Yeah, and
and that's yeah, and that's like the reason why I did the desk tour for like my office for Awake Abroad Media, is because I thought, okay, I got to start with some broad content to draw people in to what Awake Abroad Media is. And it's not going to be by me giving you like in-depth knowledge on like social media. Like, who am I to you for you to listen to me, right? But maybe I can win your attention by showing you some gadgets, some tech. I'll talk about my computer. I'll talk about my monitor. I'll put my thumbnail to attract people. And now that I have your attention, and you know, we got over 150 subscribers from that one video.
Nice.
Like, now the next video is going to be a little bit more focused on nurturing that audience, right? Clearly, the people that are following are into tech. They're into filmmaking. They're into editing. They're into photography and all that kind of stuff. So can I nurture that audience to provide them further value beyond the reach value that they received the first time, which was more so entertainment, I would say. And then eventually, not to say that all of these subscribers are customers, but somewhere in there is going to be someone that's like, you know, I could benefit from the value that you offer in a more professional setting. Maybe I can hire you. I like what you're doing, right? From that video alone, we actually got an email as well from a company that wants to do a collaboration, and they want to send us a product,
Nice.
a camera. And they're like, hey, like, we'd love to send it. We love the way you did that video. Can we send you a product, and can you make something from it? And it just starts that conversation, right? So having that reach content that reaches people, brings them into your business, the nurture content that then gives them additional value, and then eventually, and I say eventually because we're currently in a very early stage of growing our YouTube, but eventually, and once it's up and running fully, it's consistently have conversion content. Content that is clearly focused on driving conversions based on the people that you've nurtured that see you as an authority and want to hear what you have to offer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's one of the approaches, or the main approach that we take with strategies for social media marketing is reach, nurture, and conversion. You can't convert if you haven't nurtured, and you can't nurture if you haven't reached, and you can't reach, you know, if you're not creating that content that is broad enough, joining in on those conversations to have people want to listen to you in the first place. So I'm hoping the next two videos we put out, one of them's going to be on the Mac Studio M2 Max for creative professionals. And rather than talking about all the benchmarks and 2x and 10x and all this stuff that other people do a really good job of talking about, and I'm not going to do that justice, I'll just talk about my experience. Like for someone that sits in front of their computer, has 10 programs open up at once, is editing video, is hopping on calls, how does this computer work? And then that's going to be more focused on that. And then the next video that's coming out too is how professional photography can be leveraged to build a personal brand on social media in 2024. So that's more of a nurture piece. You know, we don't expect, 10, 15,000 views right off the bat, but for the people that are subscribing and that are getting interest in our channel, they'll be like, okay, there's something a bit more in depth for me to take from this.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of been the approach we've been taking because there's so many people creating content, as you know, that it's hard to be heard. Essentially, you have to join those conversations.
Yep.
What's been your strategy lately with YouTube?
I don't really have a big social media wise. I don't really do a lot, sadly, because I've been busy in meeting people face to face. That personal strategy, business wise, is face to face. So I send emails or I send videos, and then I meet them in social gatherings, or I invite them to a coffee or something like that. So that's how I've been nurturing my personal clients. This year, YouTube wise, I really wanted to start YouTube just for fun and just for posterity, because I think it's fun to have something to look back on and to share your thought about everything. But I didn't really know how much time I would have, and running my business takes so much time and energy that I didn't want to commit to anything. But this year I was I'm going to make 12 videos, about one a month, and we'll go from there. And that was my goal this year. And I looked back, and if I remove every video that is just random beautiful shot, I've made 15. And
Sweet.
So it was just trying and trying different light scenario, how I can film that in my house with very little effort, as little effort, but give as high of a content, as beautiful of a content as well, because I'm a DP, and I kind of want to have a beautiful image. I don't want to I want it to be very deeply consistent with my branding. And I found that I would need to batch record my content. But other than that, I was kind of happy to see that this year I filmed 15 video. And one of them is a review on a Fuji film camera, and it's I still get comments about that. The Fuji GFX something. I filmed that in January last year. And I released it sometimes around January, and it kind of made a lot of people react. I still receive comment because I went against the grain, against I said that camera is good, but it's not for me, and here's why. And a lot of people reacted. I've never had a video have, it's around 100 comment now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect example of broader reach content. You make a piece of content on a camera which is consumed or purchased by hundreds of thousands of people, and then you're joining the conversation of teaching them your perspective on it. I don't know about you, but how many YouTube videos do you watch before you buy a something of significance?
Oh yeah,
right.
Way too many.
It's yeah, me too. I must have watched at least 50 videos about the Mac Studio before I actually bought it. But you know what? I give this one guy credit for being basically fully responsible for my decision, because he was the only creator that made a video specifically on that computer for content creators.
Who was it?
And so when he was, I forget his name, but I'll put it up on the screen. But when he was mentioning, like, these are my export times, this is how I use it for photo, this is how I use it for video, this is how many apps I have open, this is how I use it on every day. And I was like, okay, I can actually relate to that. It wasn't the benchmarks, it wasn't the 2x, 10x, this and that, Apple Silicon versus Intel. None of that is what won me over, because it's just
Words.
it's just words. YouTuber that made that video that was like, okay, this is what I use the computer for. He had screen recordings of like his export times, of him editing the footage, of him opening a whole bunch of programs. And it was just so relatable to me, because he's like, you know, I'll have like 20 tabs open on Google Chrome. I'll also be maybe watching a YouTube video. I'll have my Spotify, not using it at the same time, but it's open. And maybe I'm also like editing a little bit and also like working on something on Photoshop. And that to me was like, okay, that told me how much RAM I needed. Because it's like, okay, if I'm going to be using all these things, I'm going to need lots of RAM. And then for storage, he gave an example of like, okay, if I'm filming a YouTube video and I'm putting it into the computer, we're talking like, I don't know, 10, 15 gigs of footage there, plus my B-roll, et cetera, et cetera. And so then that gives me an idea for storage. And then in terms of performance, he'll talk about, you know, what resolution, frame rate, export times, and all that. And then that gave me a good example of like, okay, how is this computer going to serve me or not? So I just made a video like that as well, where I'm sharing my experience, and I'm hoping that just like your video on the camera, it's able to offer people that perspective that gets them thinking, if they're considering of buying it, maybe a perspective, or if they use their computer differently, then also a different perspective in that same conversation. And also, I gotta say, I like your content on business and mindset, which I think is very much so like nurture content. Particularly how you were like really authentic and transparent about your approach for your outreach strategy, right? When you were saying like, yeah, so I'm going to give this a try and we'll see how it goes, right? And then you did another video after where like, okay, so here's time after I've been doing this and these are the results. And it got me thinking like, man, more people need to be doing this. We need to be doing that, right? Sending out a video to someone and saying, hey, I appreciate what you do. I think I have an ability to help you reach more people because you should be reaching more people, and let's have a chat. And like, poof, like that is a phenomenal way, I think, of using, leveraging video to grow your business.
Totally. And we're like in the business of video, so it's like, why aren't we using video, like outreach in that way too?
So what are you using for that? Are you using BombBomb?
BombBomb? What is that?
Okay. BombBomb is like an email plugin where you can send videos within the email. But
no, what I use is basically I upload my video on Vimeo.
Okay.
And then I take the link and just do like a thumbnail. Like, so I'm gonna take, let's say I'm gonna do the classic like this and that and whatever, and I'm gonna put like the logo of the person and the name, like hello Stephanie, for instance, under.
Okay.
And it's like, and then I start a video by saying, hey Stephanie, I'm this person and I do this and this and that. I see that your business like blah blah. So it's like kind of like always custom. So it's kind of like a little bit more time, but I just basically take a screen, like a still, and put like the logo and like a play button, so like people know that they have to click.
Right.
and then it just like goes onto the Vimeo link.
So have you been able to get some clients from that strategy?
Yeah, a couple ones. I've got like a couple of clients, but the thing is, with what I'm selling, it's always like a long run. It's never like send a video and then you have a client like
Right.
a month after. It's it's always like you have these cycles. So basically, when I started, I was kind of like in the middle of these cycles of like people needing video or needing like ads and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like jumped on that circle, and now I've gotten known through a couple of those videos, and it's been in like in a sense that I've gotten some contract out of that, and now I'm also planning some contracts for next year. Like
Okay.
there's a couple business with whom I've been in the talk, and it's always like, oh nice, we're like, we love what you're doing, we just don't have any need right now, so you
Right.
just take that and you're like, okay cool, no problem. And
Mm-hmm.
then you put them like in a list, and then like a month or two later you just send them a like an email, hey blah blah blah, how you doing, I'm just like reaching out to see how things are going. And then by doing that, it's kind of like it's a long run, it's never instantaneous. So by doing that, I've been able to have like conversation which led to like bigger project. And also like the way I see it and the way I lived it is that big project takes time,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to be working on like $3,000 $5,000 video. My goal is to work on like 15 20, and I want to work like on bigger scale. So it takes a lot of time to build a relationship to a point where these people are going to be comfortable like you being the producer of these high budget videos. So it's like you plant the seeds and you keep in touch with them, and now it's like, oh here's like a video, and then like the first few budget were like 3K, and now like the next few ones are going to be more in the realm of like 5 10Ks. And like as things progress, like I want to be like making these move towards like way higher scale.
Right.
So the way I see it is like there's no way that anybody's gonna like see that video and be like, oh yeah, I have 30K to give you for a project. You have to build a relationship, show that you're able to do what you're saying you're able to do. Like you have to show like your ability before they hire you.
Right. And that's a
Hmm.
great way of doing that is by reaching out to them
Yeah.
using video
Yeah.
itself, right?
And
Walking the
sending
talk.
like, oh yeah. And you also send like, oh here's like I sometimes do that, like I'm gonna send like a bunch of email to like these people, like look at the latest project I did, like blah blah. And like people are reaching out, they're like, oh they're good, cool, thanks for showing me that. And then gets their gear turning.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, in terms of okay, I've been having a ongoing conversation with Jazz and one of her colleagues. She's a photographer, and the topic of licensing has been coming up a lot. I know it's a little bit different for video than it is for photography, but have you noticed at all this move in the industry towards like not including or not considering usage license as part of a fee for creative work?
Hmm. I personally don't use that, because the way I see it is like I just sell my like my video.
Yeah.
I think in photos it can be like more relevant because it's not as personal as and as timely sometimes. Like if you use, let's say, a I don't know, photo, like a photo for Christmas, let's say, and you can
Yeah.
like use the same photo for many years. Whereas with video, we're usually going to be saying like, oh, like for this 2024 like season, blah blah. There's so much like timeliness to what we do in video that I personally never had to think about like what's going to happen if they use it like 5 years from now, because the way I see it is just like it's so timely that anyway they're gonna like have evolved so much that they're gonna wanna like share their new values, their new
Mm-hmm.
way of seeing things. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I've never thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally with like photography, you would have your day rate. So, you know, your
Hmm.
rate for being on set, doing what you do, you know. And then there's also and that's the creative fee, but then there's also the licensing fee, which is like how are you going to use those photos? And I think I've told you this, but I got into a situation, learning situation for myself that where I got exploited because of this, and very much so actually illegally because it's not. You know, we have laws that protect intellectual property, but basically, I was asked by a company to take some photos for a marketing campaign where they were gonna showcase, you know, certain businesses from a city, and they were gonna credit or supposed to credit the creators and the businesses in order to drive some attention towards them. And at the end of the day, these photos start being published on websites, on their website, on advertisements, on social media, on their organic social media. And then I go to the store of this company and I see my photographs printed 2 meter high posters, like behind the cash registers, outside of the store. And this is a very big company. And I start seeing all my work everywhere. And I'm like, yo, I never licensed you these images to do this, you know, to put a price tag on top of it or to put a promotional thing. Like this was supposed to be a community thing. And nowhere does it say my name, nor did I get paid for it because this was supposed to be like a community collaboration effort. Right. And for that reason, I was interested in participating. Like, I would love for this company to say photos by featuring this person or this business, but there was no mention of that. And when I brought it up and I was like, hey, you guys used my photos for commercial purpose beyond the scope of what was initially supposed to be done, right? And now my photos are distributed across the country in all these various ways, and you guys don't have it written anywhere that I've assigned these rights over to you. So that made an interesting situation. They actually completely brushed me off. And at the time, I had just moved to Mexico, and it was very complicated for me to pursue it legally. So, I mean, I think that ship has sailed, but I think the fact that, you know, companies will commission a creator to make content for them and maybe not disclose the full extent of how they plan on using the media and the impact that media is going to have on their business. Like, I don't know, but if I was to put a number figure on how many pieces of products, let's just say, this company sold with my image that they didn't pay for licensing, I'd say they made tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars across the country. Right?
Damn.
And it was free for them. And similarly, like, you know, there's often, I'm sure you've come across these, they're like, hey, like I got like, you know, $3,000 for this video. And like, okay, cool. What are you planning on using it for? Well, it's going to be broadcasted on TV. It's like, I'm sorry, but like $3,000 just not going to cut the amount of value that this piece of content is going to bring your business, right? Like we just get the short end of the stick. Mm-hmm. And I find that in certain conversations that I get into with certain companies, it's not even considered licensing. Oh, I paid for the video. Oh, and by the way, send me the raws, right? And it's kind of like
Never.
Well, yeah, I know. So like I put my foot down. If you want the raws, you're doing a buyout. Because if you're gonna have the ability to do whatever you want with the assets that we're capturing for you, you know, then you should pay for that, right? And if you don't need a buyout, if you don't plan on doing something extreme with it, that's fine. Just get a specific license for specific usage, and
Totally.
and the cost will be significantly lower. But this idea of, oh, just send me the raw work, I think it's first off, there's a legality behind it because we are legal copyright owners, and unless we grant those rights to somebody else to use, especially for commercial purposes, you're getting yourself into a pickle. So,
Yep.
like, being really clear about that, I think it's an awkward conversation. I think the less mature you are in your professional development, the more awkward it is. But the more mature you get, it's the more transparent you could be with, like, hey man, like, I'm sorry, but if you're gonna be putting $10,000 of social media advertising behind this video and it's gonna be seen by 500,000 people, $2,000 ain't gonna cut it. Not for the value that it's going to your business. But like you said, there is a lot of time-related things with video, especially when you're talking like promotions, values, because every business evolves. And that's fine, and that's part of it. And I feel like that's where like rates should the needle should move with your target audience of who you're serving. If you're serving small businesses, you can't expect a $20,000 project when they're not even pulling $20K maybe in the first 3 or 6 months, right? But if it's a medium-sized business or they're a couple years in business, then okay, you can start moving that needle up because they're going to be, it's an investment they're going to be recuperating, sometimes 5 or 10-fold.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's been a interesting topic because, I just feel like there's this disregard for that. I think it's maybe a lack of
knowledge.
Of knowledge, yeah.
From us as business owner, that's the thing. We get in that as a passion, and then we have to like start being business owners because like passion's not going to pay the bill, and passion's not going to like keep you alive. It's money.
And that's where the whole thing of like the starving artist, kind of comes up, because an artist does things out of passion. And when you do things out of passion, you're willing to forego a lot of the monetary payment that comes along with it. Like, how many can you even count the amount of collaborations you've done? Probably not, right? How many times have I done photo shoots for free, video shoots for free, and it's because of the passion. Like, I rather have a creative project than sit on my ass not doing anything.
Yep. Totally.
But at a certain point, it's like once you start valuing your time a bit more and you have more people asking you for creative projects that are commercial in nature, then it's like, yeah, sorry, bro, but like I can't.
I can do that for free.
Yeah, or I can't do it for this cheap. Or I'm sorry, but if you're going to be making $50K or $100K out of this video, I can't charge you like $500 for it anymore. Like that's just not.
And all of those smaller projects are going to fall on people starting, and then they're going to like learn how to like go up in their businesses and in their career. That's the natural circle of thing. Like, you start, you do a lot of little project for cheap and free, and then you just like pitch and learn how to like become a business owner, and then you can get those like bigger project, and then you do those, and then you go up and up and up and up until everything that you used to be doing that now you can do because they're not paid enough, they're just going to go to someone else. And that's how, like, that's the pecking order, and I think that's a healthy thing to have.
100%. I'm 100% with you, because when I was earlier in my career, I was getting those jobs. And to me, it was like, oh my gosh, like, this is such a great opportunity to work with this company and do this and that. And that's exactly what happened when I was working with that company. But, when you start making like more money, like 5-figure or so, like for projects, and then you look back at the one that you did supposedly for a community project, you're kind of like, damn, are you really going to do that to me? Like, yeah. It's crazy how that changes. But it makes talking about budget's interesting. It puts a lot of things into perspective. And Chris Doe from the future has been, I know you're in their accelerator,
Yep.
right, program. And just like the amount of perspective that he's able to put on that regard, and how he's empowering, and how he's empowering creatives. Like, educate your customers, and the only way you're going to educate your customers is create content that is going to teach them the fundamental of what they need to work with you, right? And in doing that, it's going to create that authority, it's going to create that respect, it's going to create that expectation, that rapport with them, the transparency.
I have only 30 seconds left on my memory card.
Oh, no worries. Well, I mean, I feel like we can wrap up. We got lots of content, and I appreciate you getting on the call. Well, man, good chats.